Thank you, everybody, for joining us back here at the Crypto Companies channel. We have another special panel interview for you guys today, as we sit here once again with the co-founder and chief executive officer, Mr. Ron Levy, and special guest who we had previously talked about quite a bit, Ron and I, Mr. Jared Strasser, the president of the Blockchain Training Alliance. Gentlemen, how are you both doing today?
We're doing great. So much going on in the field. It's fun to attempt to keep up with.
Yeah, that's well said. It's always a tough thing to keep up with everything as it changes so rapidly, but doing really, really well and absolutely excited to be here talking with everybody today.
Perfect. So, Ron, you had kicked this idea over to me, and I was like, man, what a perfect time to talk about this topic. You had said, let's discuss why AI loves blockchain and why blockchain loves AI. AI, of course, being artificial intelligence, which has kind of taken the world by storm these past, I'll say 6 months or so, but it had really been kind of like a slow boil that kind of now is just kind of spilling over into people's minds. And yeah, so kick us off, Ron.
Yeah, AI is absolutely beyond amazing, and the world doesn't yet know what's going to happen with it and because of it. And I would suggest that none of us know. We're all guessing because we have never seen this level of growth in such a quick amount of time. If you really think about the world up until the 1960-ish, when computers, maybe the 50s, computers, governments had them, right? And they started accelerating knowledge and achievements. And at first, that acceleration was pretty impressive compared to the past. Mm-hmm. But then we got PCs, right? We got our own computers, and then people could use computer power to develop their own thoughts, ideas, and companies, et cetera. And then it started going faster. And then I'll skip 3 or 4 more steps and I'll just go to, I always refer to it as the internet started in 2004. The reason I say that is that's when the world got high speed. Obviously, the internet was around many years before that. And obviously people were trying to use it. But high speed internet is what allowed real growth. And that was about 2004. And once that happened, that snowball just started moving faster and getting bigger, super, super quick. And then I'd probably make the argument in 2007 with the smartphone, you know, the connectivity accelerated that again. So if you look at how much time it took to develop things prior to that 1950s, 1960s I mentioned, and then you look at from the 60s to the 90s, you know, it was faster. And then you look at from high speed to, I'll call it today, it was even faster and very impressive. With AI on top of this and all of the uses, we're going to get into some of them here. Nobody can guess that exponential growth and exponential time compression. Mm-hmm. It is truly going to be amazing. Someone came up with a stat. They probably used AI to find it. They said the world can do in 7 years what it used to do in 1,000 years, and that's probably not that far off. It's truly unbelievable. And the first person that told me about when OpenAI got open sourced back in, I think it was October-ish, they said in 90 days, everybody in our industry and in the industry is going to know about it. And 90 days after that, the whole world's going to know about it. And that's about 6 months today, maybe not quite. I think he's dead on, because now you turn on the news, you're hearing about what it can do, what it is doing. When we talk about, that's a crazy thing. When we talk about it, we're not talking about guessing what it can do, because the fact is it's already doing it. What we're guessing is what the implications of that are. Mm-hmm. And look at, from my point of view, I'm enthused because we touch that industry, and I love being in the middle of all the activity. If I could put the genie back in the bottle and never have it, I would. I'm not putting a shroud over this like it's all good at all, but it's real. There's no stopping it. So let's understand it, and let's try and protect as much as we can from the downsides and enhance the upside. So that's the way I look at it. And I know Jared's been spending a ton of time in it, so I'll just kind of hand it over and see what your comments are, Jared.
Yeah, so I think first, the exponential growth at which we've been seeing AI evolve, you know, like according to Moore's law, but expedited significantly, has been truly astounding, like something amazing to watch. But I think I sit on the other side of the spectrum from you, whereas you might put the genie back in the bottle. I think I would just shatter that bottle over again and let the genie out. I'm just so incredibly enthused by what has been going on. And I do think, to start this off with a disclaimer, I do think there needs to be common sense regulation placed around AI and its evolution. But I think that needs to be done from a place of advancing the technology rather than led from a place of fear. I
Yeah,
did
I'm going to interject right there, though. So just because I can't leave these things alone.
Mhm.
You know, look at the hard time that around the world, the governments have had a hard time regulating crypto and blockchain, right? And one reason is because it moves so fast and governments by nature don't, right? And you think about someone in government, they have their job every single day. They're not like us. They don't spend all day on this. So trying to get their arms around it and understand it, by the time they regulate, it's morphed and changed. And now they're kind of behind. So by their very nature, right? So when you take AI and that level of growth, how in the world can they? Not saying they shouldn't, they absolutely should, but practically, I don't know how it works.
You can't. In that vein, you mentioned the genie in the bottle. I want to call another old analogy and bring it onto the field, and that would be opening Pandora's box. Because it can't be shut now, is really essentially what it means. They had talked about, you guys had seen Elon Musk and a couple other people come forward with an open letter saying like, hey guys, let's pump the brakes a little bit on this, or trying to see if governments could potentially intervene to slow things down. That's not a thing. That's not a thing that is possible. Even if OpenAI completely shuttered their gates, there's Stability AI, which is entirely open source. People coming together in communities doing it. You've had Meta's large language model leak online, just because someone requested it on GitHub. They just made a request and they accidentally gave it to them. And then someone was able to take that model and fine tune it so everybody can have a large language model on their own PC and run it. Because typically the large ones require a pretty significant amount of power, but that is something that is rapidly changing. So Ron, in the same way that you have internet on potential, I don't know how many devices you have internet on, you could have AI on that many devices within the next 2 to 3 years if we're talking about how fast things are going here.
It's already being spun up on phones, specifically Meta's version. And that's part of the thing, is that we can't close this. We can't go back in time. There's no way to. So what we kind of need to figure out now is how to legislate quickly, but how to do it in a way where we're not damaging or hampering what's about to come. Because to me, we've kind of covered a lot of the negatives, but the positives far outweigh it, because this is, in my opinion, an opportunity at true democratization of knowledge. And, I'm at BTA, Blockchain Training Alliance. Obviously, education is a core passion of mine. And that's something that sets apart people for far too long, those who have access to it and those who don't. And something like AI makes education accessible to absolutely anybody. When I'm playing around with ChatGPT and having it build me an application for whatever I need, it's not like, is there a business I could start with this? It's, which business should I start first with this? I have a list of different codes that I've had it write for me that could spin up to be its own business within a day or two. So I think something like that allows people to participate in the global economy, no matter where they are, no matter what their background is. And to me, that's just beautiful.
I concur. I mean, that is absolutely out there, but it's my thoughts go to what's next. About the time you can do that, and as you just stated, anybody in the world can. They don't know it yet. The masses don't know it yet. They don't know how to touch it, which is probably where we come in, because we're, education around AI. But about the time there's millions of people that have access to it and truly understand how to do things on it, then the business you chose to spin up today, could get crushed tomorrow and again at paces that we've never seen. And I don't know how that manifests us as a people and entrepreneurs and, hardworking and risk taking and all that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. It's just very confusing to me.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as I'd rather somebody who's an individual sitting in their house trying to make a life for themselves, their family, be the one who outclasses me versus, a mega corporation who sees that I'm competing with them and then just decides to crush me because they have that power, they have that ability. So I like the idea of participating on a global economy with lots of micro players, each able to have their place.
Well, now, so on that, we concur 110%. And that's why I think all of us here actually love blockchain, because it is the democratization, yeah, of knowledge, and the ability for anybody to participate. That's the foundation of kind of who we are when we wake up in the morning. So on that level, what you just described, Jared, that's a gift. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And I would say Ron, you kind of provided the perfect segue there, as we've kind of put this entire first section into AI, but this is about how blockchain and AI can relate to each other. And let's talk about how, even though there are naturally some potential dangers tied into AI, blockchain in its transparency and tamper-proofness of the applications can potentially help some of those ideas.
Jared, I'll let you take that one because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's definitely this link between AI and blockchain that hasn't really been explored yet. One, I totally agree. I think something like storing of some of the data or some of what's coming out of AI on blockchain makes a lot of sense. There are issues around scalability and speed in doing that, but I look at it even from like an education use case. Being able to have anything generated by AI live on chain, and then having a service similar to like a turnitin.com or something, check the paper that's being turned in by a student, an essay or whatever, against what ChatGPT has generated in the logs on chain. So there are certainly those types of elements where I think they work well together. But really where I see it is as a set of dominoes, and one's going to knock over the other. I'm not sure which one yet will be first, but I think about it from the perspective of, let's look at what happened with SVB, for instance. Will something like that cause people to have less belief in the global banking system? Possibly. I don't know the answer to that. But what I do believe is that AI can be the impetus. Because when people are able to purchase these microservices, have automated trading and investing happen for them at fractions of the cent of what it costs to go to the professionals right now, I don't see a need for the banks. I see people moving their money outside of the bank saying, well, if I'm trading everything on my own with AI, I might as well keep the money in my own wallet too and let it all transact from there. So this is kind of where I see this coalescence of the two technologies driving each other. Now, blockchain has a way to go on usability and user friendliness, but it's getting there. Slowly but surely, it's getting there.
But even that snowballing, I agree with what you're saying, but it is going a little bit faster. People are developing some layer twos and trying to smooth out the bugs. And even the Bitcoin blockchain, which used to only be for holding Bitcoin, they're putting the Lightning Network above it, and it's getting faster and cheaper to operate on. So it has its utility use of being able to actually spend it. And then on top of that, there's now NFTs on the Bitcoin network. And for those of you that haven't been tracking NFTs, they're not just artwork anymore. They're accessibility gateways to things. There's a whole bunch of utility use cases for NFTs. So I would suggest that the blockchain advancements are going pretty fast. And Jared, I love exactly how you said it. And it makes me wonder if you're using AI because you can use the blockchain to secure your, I'll call it money, right? You can use AI to invest and trade it. Make no mistake, in the traditional markets, someone's already using AI to do trades, right? It's happening. I can't tell you who, but you know darn well that's the first place people would implement it. That's happening. Well, if you're great at technical analysis, and you're just trying to get singles every single day on trades, you could probably do it. But now AI can do that for you. So then does it change the whole stock market? Because it's not just the big funds that have access to this anymore. It's individual people have access to it. So it just changes everything. So that domino sequence you talked about, does it change the way they make stock market work? Does it change, what happens when you make people hold stocks for an hour or 2 hours or a day because you're trying to get things under control a little bit, right? I mean, are there dominoes that end up going in that direction? I'm not suggesting that's going to happen anytime soon. I'm just trying to make a point.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally valid. Yeah. I mean, once the playing field is leveled, it's leveled. So does it make you as effective as a trader? Probably not. Is anybody going to be as effective as a trader? Probably not. So it might lessen the returns at that point, but that's all part of the democratization of it all, because now you have the opportunity. People have their money being invested and being securely handled by artificial intelligence that understands this better than any human ever could, right? And now they have time to explore their passions. That's why I believe that through this, we're going to start seeing hundreds of thousands of microservices being built on top of AI with maybe just single owner operator companies or people with like 3 to 5 employees. And they're going to be making $25–30 million a year by offering their services. And you'll find that a lot of these services will use somebody else's service as an API, or they'll leverage their technology for something. And I believe that it's not the death of capitalism, but it's certainly I would say a global shift in what capitalism looks like. And that's awesome.
It's really, really fascinating. And it reminds me of email, because when email came out, and PCs for that matter, everybody said with the use of this technology, we're going to all have more time. But what happened is when everyone's using email, you got to be there more than the next guy, right? Because you got to beat the competition. So we ended up with less time. I mean, I remember the day of leaving the office at 5 or 6 at night, and all your files were there, and the phone was on your desk. And so when you left, you didn't work. You had this other life called a personal life. That obviously over the years has blended into, you get emails or any email or social media or whatever it is 24/7, and if you don't answer in minutes, somebody's mad, right? So you're on 24/7. But the way you described it, Jared, this one may do that. It very well might, because if all these micro actions that you have to do are being handled, what does capitalism look like? Because are you earning enough that way that you can go to your passions? It's just a fascinating question.
Yeah, you guys are diving into what is the concept of value at that point. If anyone can generate something, what happens to the value of said thing? For instance, I am big in using Stable Diffusion. I can generate pictures beyond belief. I have
Describe what it is for those listeners that don't know.
Stable Diffusion was one of the first things that popped up in the AI art world because it's entirely free. It's open source. Open source essentially means all the code is out there. You don't have to pay anyone for anything. If you can run it, requires a little bit of technical know-how, but like 10 minutes worth, nothing crazy. You can watch a YouTube video on it. And then you can generate photos of really any type, from styled of any type of artist, or you could say go from watercolor to photography or anything. You can generate those on your own PC. You don't have to be connected to the internet or anything. And you can create amazing pieces of art this way. If you guys look up Stable Diffusion on Reddit, for instance, you'll see some of the craziest art you've ever seen. And some of it's generated in a matter of seconds by people's strong PCs. Someone needed something good.
Well, I was going to say so Stable Diffusion was one of the first ones to come out, and it's phenomenal. But then now you've got Midjourney, right? You can do the same thing now with videos. You couldn't do that a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
Or most of us couldn't do it, right? So and these are what Jared was talking about. They're these little niche businesses that are getting set up and building on top of what's been open sourced. We've got, they used to call it deep fakes, but I didn't read the details from Joe Rogan, but he just announced that someone's using AI to duplicate his podcast. Like, you won't even know it's real. And that's not tomorrow, that's now.
Yes, absolutely. And there's entire TikTok pages dedicated towards taking, they'll take ex-presidents, or they'll take political pundits or Joe Rogan or comedians, and they'll put them all in a room together, and essentially AI will generate what they'll say, and then they'll have AI through 11 Labs generate the voices for each of them, and they're making I would say probably lots of money, getting millions and millions of views, having ex-presidents talk about who their favorite character on The Simpsons is, or whatever topic they want them to talk about. AI can replicate it perfectly. And
well, you know, let's talk about 11 Labs a little bit, because we had this discussion earlier. And you know, using your voice to authenticate, like, talk about that and the dangers of security on that.
This is a huge topic, and it's now, I've seen it in the news twice, and it's going to be in the news a lot more. 11 Labs now allows anybody, and I mean, you can go on the website right now. You get 30 seconds to 2 minutes of someone having a clear conversation. So, gentlemen, right now, the nail is in all of our coffins because we have just been sitting here talking, and it'll be online. You can take that information and make a AI generated version of their voice, and you can type in what you want it to say, and it'll say it for you in their voice. This has very large implications for things such as unnamed bank that I had worked with. They would use voice verification. Someone, a journalist, tried to get into their bank using voice verification, and they used 11 Labs to clone their voice, and the bank let them in. So that is no longer an acceptable way to verify someone. The other way, of course, being text message. Everyone from the blockchain industry knows very well your phone number is not actually that safe. SIM swapping was something that would very frequently happen to get access to people's cryptocurrency. So banks are not catching up either. And yeah, well, it's one thing if regulators are taking a little bit of time to catch up. If your money isn't safe because the people in charge of protecting that aren't catching up, ooh, that's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. I feel like we veered off a little bit. I mean, I'm sorry, was that you, Jared? Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. You go ahead.
I just want to bring it back to this blockchain, you know, meets AI and AI meets blockchain, and try and discuss that a little bit, because it's a little harder subject, I think.
It is,
because I don't have a clear direction where to go with that conversation. With AI, we're playing with it every day. We can talk all day long about things that came out today that weren't here yesterday. Like, there's no question about that. But to keep with the focus of sort of blockchain, you know, Jared, you came up with some great sort of uses there around money and investing, but utilizing the blockchain to secure things. So I don't know if there's any other ideas you guys had on what's coming regarding the two.
Well, yeah, I think you look at something like the 11 Labs type of situation, right? Imagine now if anything that you generated through 11 Labs, it hashes that information and writes it to the chain. And then it's always authenticated that that came from 11 Labs. That was not that individual saying it. But then also imagine that you hash the details of a podcast or of a conversation, whatever that case is, that lives on chain. And then you have verifiable proof that this is legitimate. This is something I said. This is not legitimate. You could see right here that it was generated by 11 Labs on such and such a date. And so blockchain is that back-end security layer to, I want to call it digital rights management, but it's sort of a whole new ballgame of digital rights management, but very similar applications for deep fakes. The original video on chain, not necessarily the video itself living on chain, but the metadata behind it, and then being able to match that up against the newly generated video and say, wait, no, this is the original, that one's fake. There's huge potential there for blockchain.
My gosh, the way you describe it. So I probably mentioned it here before. It's a project called Ureeqa, Ureeqa, and they do digital rights management. They're dealing with multiple countries that are contracting them to do their copyrights and trademarks, things like that, all on chain. And it's kind of an amazing project by some very smart people. But what's happening now is you can create something in video or put it online, no matter what it is, and you could think you're going to trademark it. But literally in a split second after you've done it, someone else has trademarked it. They just took it, trademarked it quickly. So having a project like Ureeqa that could authenticate these things instantly on the blockchain, when I say instantly, I mean instantly, it could then be part of that solution you described. So I think you're dead on.
Yeah, I think there are like such tremendous synergies between the two technologies, but The reason why I think AI is getting more press and being spoken about more is because that's actually a user-centric type of application, right? We're there, hands-on keyboard, able to use it, able to play around with it. Blockchain isn't meant to be like this upfront, users are supposed to interact with it type of thing. It's a backend. You don't hear anybody asking, like, what version of SQL are you running on your database? Nobody cares. It does what it's supposed to do. And that's kind of the future of blockchain as well, is this shouldn't be a technology that average users need to interact with on a daily basis. It should be a login, and then everything functions as they're familiar with. They don't need to know that it's running on Ethereum or some other layer 2 that's built for scalability. It's not relevant to them.
My gosh, it makes me think of even KYC stuff. We all know of some companies actually that are doing it with, you know, biometrics of different kinds, right? Whether it's you know, using your eyes or your face itself or the sound of your voice. And the fact is, with this AI, I don't know how much you can trust any of that. But the one thing that you mentioned is NFT representation on the blockchain. So there's plenty of sites now that if I have that NFT token in my wallet, I have to connect my wallet. But if I do that, then I get my access, because you can't fake that. It just is what it is. So, you know, do we see a bigger use case for NFTs to protect from these other things? It very well could be.
For sure. I think the blockchain has existed as a hammer, and this is the perfect kind of nail to use it on in that regard. The amount of information that is going to be AI generated, whether that be video, picture, audio, or text, is going to be proliferating at a rate that is going to outpace human creation of those things, to the point where within the next couple of years, it might be a 10-to-1 ratio, which means real created things should be authenticated. And there just so happens to be a perfect tool for that in blockchain. And all people might see is a little check mark beside saying this is authentic and this is real. And on the back end, blockchain has handled the rest.
Yep.
Really interesting. And now you dovetailed into the data storage itself, right? Who are the winners? Is it the old guard, AWS, you know, as one of the top 3, that's going to store all this, or IPFS, which is a blockchain based, data storage. And there's a few others, not the only one. Who's going to win out there, and where's it going to be? Yeah, I don't know, because you're right. This data has to get stored somewhere, you know, to operate ChatGPT. I mean, Microsoft needed to do it. Like you needed something that big to house it on. And then by them investing in it, it got bigger, and they'll house more of it there, right? It was a circular investment that makes nothing but sense for them.
Depends, I think, Ron, on who the major players end up being in AI, because if it maintains as like OpenAI, then you could probably rest assured it will live on Microsoft. Most of the data will be stored there. But
Right.
if there are newcomers like Anthropic and people like that who are then able to leverage some of the peer-to-peer distributed network type of technologies that blockchain affords them, then I could see a future where that storage is housed on, you know, just bits of data on hundreds of thousands or millions of different machines and nodes, and being put together only when it's called on by its rightful owner. And that kind of ties back to the NFT part as well, because you issue those NFTs as soul-bound tokens, essentially meaning that they're unable to be traded, they're unable to be deleted. You can't ever do anything but own that NFT unless you burn your wallet, right? But the idea being that those types of things would allow you to authenticate who you are, pull the files that you need from wherever they're distributed, and be able to then access them without having to worry about centralized storage and the tremendous risk that that brings.
Really mind-blowing. Really is. And this is, for me, this conversation is so valuable, because unless you discuss with others, you aren't able to go layers and layers deep. You only go as deep as your own knowledge, right? Or your own questions. But here, some of my questions are getting answered and they're opening up new ones. And it seems to go deeper and deeper. And I couldn't be more fascinated on the topic and where it's going to go. And I asked someone that I'm very close with, that's in the industry and paid a lot of money to go back to his bosses and tell them what's going to be in the tech future, right? A year from now, 5 years from now. And I asked him the other day, I go, what do you even tell them now? How do you even tell them what December 2024 is going to look like? Because I have no idea. That
True.
Where we were in October compared to April now is going to be 1/100th of where we're going to be from April to September. Right? I mean, it is truly unbelievable. But that's why these conversations are probably pretty important, to do our best to attempt to see what that's going to be. But ultimately, to really be in it, you've got to pick a niche in it. It's going to be no one's going to be able to understand all of it. Even today, it's just not possible. And I think you uncovered a few, Jared, with what you said, and that is, tying NFTs to again, digital rights management, to what is real, and someone being able to verify that. Because at this point, if we see a video or hear something, I don't know how you trust it.
I don't think you can anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's a scary time. Absolutely. And I remember when GPT-3 first came out and it was usable by everybody. And I talk about this like that was yesteryears. It was maybe like what, a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, we're still about 10 years away from being able to generate AI videos. We're still a ways off from that. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, oh, we're right there now, huh? That's just ready to go. Okay.
Oh no. I mean, I watched someone on live screen sharing with them, and he had a video and he said, watch this. And he just gave a voice command, get that tree out of the video. Tree was gone. It's stuff that I don't know how all this changes everything we do, but make no mistake, the change is here.
Yeah. It's essentially allowing people to take what they have in their mind and actually bring it into reality is essentially where we're at now. And so, gentlemen, I'm also really curious, before we wrap up here, what do you think the opportunities are between blockchain and AI going into the future that people might be able to sink their teeth into? You guys have, and again, Ron, you've already mentioned that right now it's basically a giant pot of things stirred together and everything's spinning so fast. But I'm curious if you guys have any ideas of where things might wind up for these two things.
I'm going to start the answer a little bit by saying that what is blockchain? Blockchain is a platform that allows us to exchange value in a way we never could before. That's really what it comes down to. It's a value exchange vehicle that you can count on for security, for speed, as well, depending on the blockchain, depending on what you're doing, of course. But that's what it's there for. So you got this AI thing coming around, and what we learned about AI is there's no limit to what it can do and what it can produce. But the one thing is, you can't validate it. You can't know what's authentic and what's not by a particular person, place, right? You just don't know. So maybe, as Jared was discussing, that the value component that blockchain offers is the perfect marriage with the AI, that it becomes that check mark you mentioned earlier, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Jared, what about you?
I think there are countless ways, I'm sure millions of which nobody has even considered yet, because even at this stage, I still say that we've tapped maybe 1% of what blockchain has to offer. And I fully believe that. Some different areas where I kind of look at it like, let's say AI is the ability to harness and own knowledge. And then let's look at blockchain as the ability to harness and own your data. And when you combine those two elements, there's nothing out of reach.
Well said. Yeah, very well said. We could always ask the AI how blockchain and AI can work together.
I have.
There you go. Smart man. Very smart.
I love it.
All right, gentlemen. Well, is there anything else you guys want to cover before we end here today? I mean, we've kind of went through a lot of different things, a lot of weight in the things we've talked about here today. The future it looks momentous. I'd probably be a good word for it from my end.
I have nothing to add. I just want to state that I think we should do this in 4, 6, 8 weeks from now and reflect on our comments about how quickly things are changing and report back on that to show the masses that are going about their daily lives and aren't able to spend the time we are in it, and to really show that we're not making that up. The acceleration is going at a pace that is absolutely off the charts.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. Where
Yeah.
are we now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, Ron. What I'll do is I'll have my AI assistant schedule that for me. And then by the time that rolls around, Michael Whitlatch AI will actually be the person who shows up and performs the interview. That'll be
That would be full circle right there.
All right, gentlemen, Jared, Ron, it's a pleasure as always. And if anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. Stay tuned for that video in 6 weeks and see you guys then.